This is Jim Hughes from AFIO Now. We have a series of recorded presentations from former senior U.S. intelligence officers who have great stories to tell. I'm joined here by an old friend and colleague who has an interesting background and some great experiences to share with you today. After serving in the U.S. Coast Guard, he joined the CIA in 1990, where he was an analyst for Russian and Eastern European affairs. He was also an editor for the President's Daily Brief and a speechwriter for the Director of Central Intelligence. He got his Ph.D. from the Fletcher School in 1996 and also worked as the CIA historian for about 11 years before retiring in 2016. Please welcome Mr. Nicholas Dujmovic. Nick, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Jim. It's really an honor to have this opportunity to talk to the membership. I've been a proud member of AFIO since I retired in 2016. And one of the reasons I love AFIO is its commitment to educating the public about the realities of intelligence. That's a commitment that I share. And speaking of share, I'm going to share my screen and get started here. So I've titled my presentation, Teaching Intelligence at the College Level in Retirement, with the acronym Tickler. All of you good former bureaucrats know that a tickler is some sort of device, a file or a memo that acts as a reminder to prompt action on your part. And that's what I want to do today. I'd like to share with you my experience at Catholic University and more generally in the academic world, because frankly, and this is the bottom line up front, we need more former professionals from the intelligence community to go into intelligence education. And I want to encourage AFIO members, especially recent retirees, to consider giving back by teaching. If you have been teaching, thank you. This talk will be old news and very basic to you. For those that haven't been teaching, in this presentation, I intend to describe for you the overall demand for intelligence courses at the college level, specifically the need for educators who have actually served in intelligence, and why you might want to consider teaching. What sort of positions are there? How to break into academia, and something of what you can expect when you get there, because it is different. It's a different tribe of folks. Why teach intelligence? There are two groups of reasons to teach intelligence, those external to you or objective, while the other set of reasons is subjective. They concern you directly. The primary external reason is that demand for intelligence courses on college campuses is high, and it's growing. Now, in the mid-1980s, when the Coast Guard sent me to graduate school, I was fortunate to take a course in intelligence, but at that time, in the mid-80s, it was one of about 50 courses in the entire country, at least among civilian colleges and universities. Flash forward to the 9/11 attacks, and intelligence courses, already growing in number, have proliferate after that. The last study that I'm aware of from several years ago said that there were about 1,000 such courses. And that number has surely risen because the number of academic intelligence programs, not just single courses, but entire programs, has also risen dramatically. For years, the only dedicated intelligence studies program outside of the military schools was at Mercyhurst College in Pennsylvania. 5 years ago, the number of such programs was about 24. And the latest figures I have indicate that the number of dedicated intelligence programs in academia has almost doubled in those 5 years to about 40. And that number seems to be rising. Just this summer, I became aware of two more programs, one at the University of Lynchburg and another at Newman University in Kansas. A related external reason is that with all this growth, there are relatively few intelligence educators that have significant professional experience in intelligence. I estimate based on what I've seen, that number is about 15%. So that means that roughly, 75 to 90% of the 1,000 plus intelligence courses in this country are being taught by professional career academics who have probably never served in intelligence, have never held a clearance or traveled undercover, never handled an asset, or considered various clandestine and other sources in writing analysis for a policymaker, or briefed a congressional staffer, or any of the myriad activities that intelligence professionals do. Consequently, these career academics have little to say when students ask them, what's it like in intelligence? And the students want to know what it's like, and they have a need to know what it's like. What intelligence education needs is more people like AFIO members, former professionals who have served for many years, not just 3 or 4, but have made a career out of it, and therefore have the experience and insights to teach effectively and to counsel and inspire young people who want to know about intelligence as a career and who want to know that it's a great career. Obviously, in terms of personal reasons, they're on the right, for you to get into teaching intelligence, it's a wonderful opportunity to give back to the profession. All of you served your country and gladly made sacrifices to do so. And thank you for your service. Well, this is a way for you to continue to serve. And it's inherently rewarding teaching intelligence to young people. There are other personal reasons to do it. When people are planning to retire, they often hear from retirement counselors who advise that there are some specific things to do in order to have a successful, enjoyable retirement, and a long one. And if you get into teaching, you check all the boxes. For example, staying physically and mentally active. Under normal conditions, when we don't have a pandemic, teaching does involve physical activity. You have to get to class. That's suspended for now. But more relevant is the mental activity, especially the kind that gets you out of your comfort zone. Setting up a course, developing lectures, class exercises, and other instructional materials. This is challenging mental work, and it works the mind more than doing the Sudoku or the crossword puzzle in the paper in the morning. Answering questions from students, assessing them, learning a new bureaucracy. All this is important. Also, staying socially active. Needless to say, teaching brings you into contact with new people in new environments. You'll have new colleagues to get to know, and you'll always have new students. Teaching is a great retirement activity in the main because it gets you out of the house. It imposes a routine and a purpose to your schedule, forces you to deal with new people and situations. Bottom line, it's good for you. And also, consider the assets that you bring to the table. There's your substantive expertise, of course, in intelligence, but don't discount the other characteristics of former intelligence officers. You know how to organize things. You have superior communication skills. You have social skills. You like to stay busy. You don't shy from challenges. And very important, you maintain a social network. Your network is a unique resource you can draw on for your classes, guest lecturers, panel discussions, special events. My best asset at Catholic University is my Rolodex. Although students don't know what a Rolodex is, we all do. They certainly benefit from it. I bring in people. This is one example of a lecture series that I did a couple years ago, various people that I know personally. Former Dernza, Bill Studeman, has been to talk to my students 3 times, and we had him scheduled for a 4th before the pandemic hit. Let's talk about what academic positions are there. Very basically, and this is very basic, there are full-time positions and there are part-time positions, part-time often called adjunct positions. Full-time has many more advantages, but it's hard to break into, especially at first. Part-time is easier to start with, but has distinct disadvantages that could be off-putting. Let me outline the general points of each. There on the left, full-time, Now, I teach full-time at Catholic University, which normally there means teaching 2 courses in one semester and 3 in the other in a given academic year. But because I also administer a program, the Certificate in Intelligence Studies, I'm allowed to teach just 2 courses per semester. Course load varies greatly between universities and even within a university between departments. I know other universities that require full-time professors to teach 3 or even 4 courses a semester, which I think is brutal. The 2 modes of full-time are contract and tenure track. You all know what tenure is. It requires a lot of commitment to achieve, including usually a lot of scholarship. Personally, I do not recommend pursuing tenure track unless you intend to have a long academic career and have a lot of energy. Given the opportunity to be on tenure track, I declined in favor of being on contract because it would give me more time to teach, to prepare lessons, to run a program. Being on contract goes by different names, depending on the university, professor of practice or continuing professor. At Catholic, I'm a clinical professor. It just means I'm on contract. Now, sometimes contract positions don't require the Ph.D., especially if you have some name recognition, like a John McLaughlin or Michael Hayden. At Catholic University, contracts are typically 1-year duration, but I was able to negotiate, so I'm on a series of 2-year contracts. What are the requirements? Well, usually the Ph.D. is required. That varies. That does vary. Some universities will allow full-time professors with just a master's degree. It's not the norm. Usually there is an expectation that you've already taught at the college level and you've published some scholarship in your field. And sometimes there's the expectation that you will continue to do research and continue publishing separate from your teaching. The advantages of full-time work, whether you're contract or tenure track, the pay is much more than part-time work, which we'll get to. You'll probably get an office, business cards. There is a great deal of prestige. Once the media finds out about you, they'll be calling, asking you for commentary on intelligence matters. Your department may have a budget to send you on research trips. I was able to go do research at the Eisenhower Library in Kansas, go to conferences, and so forth. There are disadvantages, and that also includes pay. Pay is an advantage. It's a pro because it's more than part-time. But the con is that you won't make as much as you did as a government employee. In fact, your full-time academic salary may be a lot less. But remember, you're not doing it for the pay. There's also another disadvantage is the academic bureaucracy and other issues I will bring up later. So let's move to part-time or adjunct work. There on the right. This is the most realistic way to teach intelligence at the college level. Even prestigious universities very often will hire part-time instructors who don't have the PhD, but they have a particular expertise. When I left my adjunct position, when I was teaching intelligence at American University, a very fine university, I managed to get as my successor a CIA history staff colleague who was hired for his expertise. He did not have a PhD. He had a master's, and his master's was in ancient history. It will vary by university. The advantages of the part-time work, well, teaching just one course is a good way to see whether you like it or not. It's the real deal. And students don't make distinctions, generally, between full-time and part-time professors. And you will be called professor. There is some prestige here. You often have flexibility in when you teach. That depends. And this is important. It can be a stepping stone. Let's assume students are going to flock to your course because it's about intelligence. After a time, you can offer a second course as an adjunct, and eventually you might be able to parlay your courses into a proposal for a program, which is an argument for you to be full-time. More on that in a bit. Disadvantages of part-time work. The most serious one is the pay. To use a precise technical term, pay for adjuncts really sucks. It's a lot of work to create a course and to teach it. On a prorated basis, you're not going to be making minimum wage. In the Washington, D.C. area, the better paid adjuncts get for a single course in a semester about $6,000. At Catholic, it's about $5,000. Outside the Beltway, it might be a lot less, $3,000 or even less. Here, you are really not doing it for the money. Also, you probably won't have your own office. You may have to teach late in the evenings at American University. I had a class that met once a week between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. Again, if your course becomes popular and comes to be seen as a must-have for your department, you can start negotiating these things. Okay, how to start? Let's assume we're going to take the approach of the part-time or adjunct approach. You need to do some research with the colleges in your area to see whether any already have intelligence courses or even a program. It's much easier to augment an existing program than to argue for something that doesn't yet exist. If your local state university or even community college has intelligence courses, then you want to focus on who is teaching them. If it doesn't have these courses, you should learn who is teaching related courses in national security and international affairs, American government, maybe law enforcement. You need to take a page from case officers, right? Who spot, assess, and develop before pitching an espionage asset. Does anybody in your personal network have ties at the university that might be helpful? If not, you may have to approach the professor or the department head directly by email, old-fashioned letter, or by phone. If they have a lecture series, you could start attending that. Introduce yourself and exchange cards, and you should have business cards and also a LinkedIn account. Don't discount the fact that the fact that you are a former U.S. intelligence officer will cause you to be remembered. It'll get attention. And once you're known to the right people in academia, I actually would not start by offering a course off the bat, unless you've done so before, and then by all means, go ahead. But if not, I would start by offering a guest lecture on an intelligence topic, one that obviously reflects your professional expertise, collection or other operations, analysis, country or regional politics, and then be brilliant. Hit it out of the park so that you're asked back. And in the course of this relationship, as it's developing, at some point you may be able to say to these academics, I could teach a course on that. Let's say you're an expert in technical collection. I would love, by the way, to have a separate course just on technical collection in my program. Or maybe you're an expert in counterintelligence or analysis. You can offer it perhaps as a summer course. Summertime, the summer term is often when new courses and new instructors are tried out. You could offer it that way. The goal, however you do this, the goal is to become indispensable because your course, in all likelihood, will become popular. It's about intelligence. You might be able to parlay that into teaching a second course, as I've said before, and students are going to flock to that one too. One of my adjuncts currently, who is teaching cyber intelligence at Catholic, Bill Nolte, he offered to teach a second course as an adjunct on the moral foundations of intelligence. I said, what a great idea. We're taking him up on that. A very ambitious goal would be taking your established record of teaching popular intelligence courses and making the argument to your department that, we, and emphasize the we could have a program here. Higher education is a business. So they will probably conclude that this proposed program of yours would bring in students and money. And of course, you are the obvious candidate to run the program. So What's it like? Teaching intelligence at the college level, as I said, it's rewarding, it's exciting, it's stimulating, and mostly it's fun. But there are other features about academia that you should know about. I'm going to be very brief on these. First of all, there may be confusion over where intelligence fits in the academic organization. If you have any say in the matter at all, I would recommend the political science department. It's probably the least bad fit. And you can always argue, well, intelligence at bottom is a function of government. My program at Catholic was originally going to be in the business school. And at other places, believe it or not, it is in the business school. Or putting intelligence into a criminology department or a law enforcement program, it happens a lot. I don't think it's ideal. That's my view. You might not have any choice on the matter. Academic culture. For me, the difference between the culture of academia and that of the federal service that I was used to, that was stark. It took months for me to figure out that I didn't have to be at the university every day. There are no core hours of coverage. And consequently, there's little interaction with academic colleagues. And I'm using my fingers to put quotation marks around the word colleagues, because colleagues in academia are not like colleagues that we're used to in federal service. These colleagues would, they come and go as they please and generally show up at the office for meetings and when they have to teach. Weeks or months would go by before I would see any of them. A couple of them I actually never met. A related observation is that compared with working in the federal service, let me put this bluntly, the social skills of professional faculty are often somewhat stunted. I found myself having to initiate interactions and introductions with my new colleagues. Turf issues. Turf issues are real. The old saying is that academic disputes, particularly about turf, are so vicious because the stakes are so low, and it truly is. These things can get nasty, as I found when I proposed notional intelligence courses that involved other departments. I learned the hard way. Tenured faculty often have an entrenched sense of entitlement that is truly astonishing. In the IC, you succeed as a team player. In academia, not so much. I say that in terms of bureaucracy, you'll miss the federal bureaucracy because the academic bureaucracy outdoes it in being unhelpful. There are a lot of petty, entrenched bureaucrats who can't figure out why and how they're keeping their jobs. We're doing more hindering than helping. Make sure that in your department, you befriend your administrative officer or support person. They can help lubricate the machinery. The students are generally eager and are hoping to learn what intelligence is really like, which is, of course, why you're there. They operate, however, in what's been called a post-literate world. So you may need to adjust your expectations about how much they can really effectively read in a week, and definitely how well they can write, because most of them cannot write. In terms of vocational interest, you'll get a lot of interest from excellent students and from poor students alike. In fact, sometimes I think I get more career questions from the poor students. I inform them all about careers. I use AFIO's great booklet on intelligence careers. Though I'm not a recruiter, I tell them I'm not a recruiter. I try not to judge their career potential, at least not to their faces. Resources. We could talk a long time about resources for teaching intelligence. Generally, there have never been so many helpful resources available to an intelligence educator. Textbooks, online resources, databases of declassified documents, syllabi for established courses. CIA Center for the Study of Intelligence, my old outfit, has a lot of helpful materials. And AFIO, has a very fine guide to the teaching of intelligence that's available free online. On resources, I can expand on this, and I'm happy to advise on this score. What about getting stuff cleared through the Publications Review Board, or whatever your former agency calls it? A PRB chairman told me that he was interested only in my course outline, that is my syllabus, not my lesson plans, unless I myself had a specific concern. And so that's been my method. You need to be aware of your former agency's guidance on this, and you need to use your judgment, keeping in mind that the requirement to protect still classified information is a lifelong obligation. Again, I can elaborate on all this because there's so much more to say. For now, let me end with an exhortation. Having more former professionals in intelligence education is really important. It will improve intelligence education at the university level. It will enhance the public's understanding of intelligence. It will have the result of boosting the quality of candidates for employment in the intelligence community, and therefore, it will ultimately serve and improve U.S. national security interests. I hope you will consider it. Let me just run through some, very quickly, some other things that we've been able to do. Ethics of Intelligence panel, Michael Hayden and Sue Bromley there on the right. Another event with Michael Hayden on ethics in the technical collection of intelligence. Being in the Washington area helps, and having contacts at CIA so we can make field trips. We've been to NGA as well, which was eye-opening. Catholic University started an intelligence club. This was a students' initiative, and it's does a lot of great work. And I will end there and be happy to take questions from Jim Hughes. And I have my email there up there deliberately. Send me an email. I'm happy to elaborate, answer questions, give you suggestions, and to serve you. Thank you, Jim.
Nick, that's great information. Thank you very much for taking the time today. I think all of our viewers are going to find it to be very, very interesting, but particularly our network of college university professors and students. As Nick knows, one of the founding principles of AFIO, going back to 1975 when we were established, was to do academic outreach. And I'm happy to say that we've performed in a number of areas very, very well. Nick cited several of those examples. We also have a great network of college and university professors around the country who are retired colleagues. And Nick is very definitely one of those. And the idea and the reason why I was so excited about inviting Nick on for the program today is that, especially in this new virtual world that we're all being forced to operate in, I would really like to find new and more ways to engage academia around the country and follow the great advice that Nick has given. Nick, as I mentioned to you before we began recording, we're now doing virtual work for AFIO. And in addition to virtual board meetings, I've actually had a couple of virtual sessions with all of the AFIO chapter presidents, a number of whom are either professors in their own right or have made great strides in connecting with local colleges and universities in their areas. I know a number of them would like to reach out and talk to you, and I'm delighted that you put up your email address for that. Do you have any particular advice for that group? Because they're not in the Washington area. They don't quite have the same reach that we have being close to the nation's capital. Are some things that they can be thinking about doing because they don't have that same reach that you've got?
Well, I think one silver lining of the pandemic is that we've been forced to think in new ways. Back in March, when the lockdown happened for everybody, faculty at Catholic had 2 days to go online, and it was a learning curve, but we figured it out. But we've continued this fall with our Intelligence Club presentations, and basically distance is a lot less important. Yeah, sure, it's great to have an in-person visit from Michael Hayden or Michael Morrell or Bill Studeman, Admiral Studeman. There's nothing like that. But if I were teaching outside the Washington area, I would start using this new technology, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or Google Meet. This is the way to eliminate that distance and to utilize, because it's easy to do, and we found that it's easy to do. It's easy to say yes to as well.
Nick, a great performance today. We're really grateful. You are a great member of AFIO.
Thank you.
I want to thank you very, very much, and hope to get you back on the program in the not too distant future.
Yeah, we can talk about historical substance as well. That would be fine.
I'd love to tap your brain on some of the Russian, Eastern European topics as well.
Oh, gosh, it's been a long time since I've considered those. But some things never change.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All of you stay tuned. We'll have more programs coming in the future.